I think I figured out why so many smart people stay stuck. Not because they don't know enough, not because they haven't worked hard enough, not because they haven't learned enough. In fact, the person who helped me see this has spent years attending conferences, hiring mentors, reading books, collecting frameworks. I had breakfast with her this week. Welcome back to the Catalyst Code, where we crack the internal code that creates your external results. This isn't just about awareness. Most people stop there and then they wonder why their results aren't changing faster. This is about your embodiment, learning to operate from your true identity and maintaining the frequency that actually produces the life and results that you want. Once embodiment shifts, everything changes. You are the catalyst. This is the code, so let's go. Have you ever met someone who has attended every conference, hired every coach, read every book, worked through every process, and somehow they're still wrestling with this exact same problem? I had breakfast with one of those people this week. She is super smart, accomplished, well-read, deeply committed to helping people in her own coaching practice, but still frustrated. And somewhere around coffee refill number 2, I found myself wondering, how is it possible to learn so much and still feel stuck? But this is how most frustrated people feel. Something isn't working. So they gather more information, another book, another mentor, another strategy, another certification, another conference. They're convinced they're just one insight, one breakthrough away. They keep hoping that next thing will finally shake loose whatever seems to be holding them back. But as I listened to her talk, I realized that it still wasn't shaking loose. She wasn't gathering answers anymore. She was gathering processes. And despite all of them, she was still wrestling with the same challenge she had years ago. So I gamely stepped in and described an entirely different perspective. And she nodded and said, "That's exactly what I teach." I talk identity. She heard mindset. I'd say embodiment. She heard feeling. I said operate from the identity that has already achieved the outcome. And she heard processes to achieve the outcome. And every time she smiled and said, "That's exactly what I teach." And every time she said it, I became more convinced that we were talking about two entirely different things. And that's when it hit me. She didn't think she was resisting the idea, but all the while, her locked in identity, the one accustomed to calling the shots in her life, was translating it for her. Every new idea was being applied to the same underlying pattern. Have you ever done that? I mean, have you ever heard an idea and immediately thought, oh, I know that already. I've heard that before. That's just another version of blah, blah, blah. Because if so, you may be doing exactly what I was watching happen over breakfast. See, most people assume they need a better plan, a better coach, a better strategy, a better system. Sometimes that's true because you need someone to help bring this all to light for you. But what if the thing keeping you from the results you want isn't something you're doing wrong? What if it's something you're misunderstanding about yourself at your core? What if you become exceptionally skilled at solving the wrong problem for your progress forward? Now, you may think, you know where I'm going with this. You've got the answer. Paradigm, subconscious programming, limiting beliefs, the way you were raised. Nope, none of that. Those things definitely influence the situation you're in, but they're secondary to this discussion and to what I was seeing happen right in front of me yesterday at breakfast. My breakfast friend had a category for all of those things. She did not have a category for what I was talking about, which is why she kept translating it. The operating identity was actively intercepting the idea before it ever had a chance to land. It's like trying to explain a bird to a fish. You tell the fish, there's a creature that moves through the air, and the fish immediately replies, oh, another kind of fish. No, a bird. But the fish has no category for birds, so it translates the new thing into something familiar. Oh, a flying fish. Yes, I've seen those before. See, in the end, this really isn't about this lovely breakfast person because once I saw it, I realized I've seen the same thing everywhere. People do this all the time, not just fish. Business owners do it, executives, entrepreneurs, coaches. I've done it. You've done it too. We assume that if we're still struggling, we simply haven't found the right process yet. But we're trying to solve the wrong category of problem. So, take for instance a business owner who thinks he or she is struggling with marketing. So, they hire another marketing consultant and then another one and then another one. But the real operating issue might be that they still see themselves as the technician, artist, practitioner, or creator, not the business owner. The marketing isn't the problem, the operating identity is. Or take a hospitality property. A resort decides it wants to elevate itself into a more luxury position. On the surface, the conversation becomes about amenities, bathrobes, service standards, guest experiences at the pool, programming, operations. Those things all matter. But underneath this sits a much bigger question. But underneath that sits a much bigger question. Who are we becoming on the other side? Who are we becoming on the other side of this? Because every organization, even a small business, you out there, you might be operating, you're carrying an identity. And whenever that identity begins to shift, friction shows up. Not because people are arguing about amenities and programming and service standards or operations. They're trying to answer that bigger question. Who are we becoming? Who am I becoming? And as long as they're answering that question from the same operating identity that they've always had, they will recreate the same results. And I've certainly seen it in individuals who are looking to me to potentially solve their problem. You hear from me, it's an identity issue. And you translate it into right, my mindset. You hear you're operating from the wrong framework. And you translate it into, okay, this is about my habits. You hear you cannot become what you already are. And you translate it into somehow I need to start acting more confident. The translation happens so super fast, we don't even notice it. And that's what I found so fascinating about this the other day at breakfast. The matrix identity, the operating one, the one in charge of running your life and producing pretty much the same old results. When you begin considering a new idea, you may notice when it screams in your head, no, stop. But when that new idea lofts your way and you instead hear yourself saying, oh, yeah, I already got that. Your operating identity has dropped into super stealth mode. That's why it's so hard to spot. Resistance is obvious. Interception is invisible. Resistance says, I don't agree. Interception says, I already know this. Resistance creates friction. Interception creates certainty. Resistance announces itself. Interception just hustles the new idea out the back door before it even has a chance to challenge the identity that's currently running the show. I see this with my advanced students all the time. God bless them. I love them all. Sometimes I will be explaining the real difference about your true identity and what it knows it can do for you if you let it. And they'll say, right, right, or I know, or I'm already doing that. Really? Because if you got this down and you're already doing that, why is your life pretty much the same and you don't feel 100% fulfilled? I know in that moment something else has happened. The idea has already been intercepted. The fish is saying, oh, yeah, that's a flying fish. I've seen those before. While you're saying, don't worry, I've got this. I already understand. Yeah, Diane, I think just like that. No worries. What's your stealth identity reporting back? Translation complete. Threat neutralized. So here's something to watch for this week. The next time you hear an idea But you immediately think, I know that. I've heard that before. Stop telling me the same thing, Diane. That's just another version of what you taught me before that I already know and I already do. Pause and ask yourself, what am I assuming this means? Because that's where the interception is happening. That's where the operating identity steps in and assures you, we've got this. We've already understood. Maybe you do, but maybe you don't. Looking back, the thing that struck me most about breakfast wasn't that she necessarily disagreed with me. She didn't. And it wasn't that she wasn't extremely intelligent. She clearly is. She didn't have a category for what I was talking about. But the operating identity, oh yeah, it knew. It knew what I was talking about. And it was on full alert. So it did what operating identities do. It quickly, and in somewhat alarmed fashion, translated the new idea into the closest familiar category and moved on and took her with it. How many opportunities, insights, relationships, business breakthroughs, personal transformations never get a chance to take root? Not because we reject them, especially not because we openly reject them, but because we rename them. We decipher them as something, a context we already are familiar with. The moment we decide that we already know is usually the moment we stop learning. And the moment we stop translating is often the moment we finally embed something genuinely new for our lives. I'm Diane Armitage, and thank you for listening to The Catalyst Code.